I feel the need to, since you've been warned that I write too much, I feel the need to reassure you, as the last reader of the evening, that I will not read too much. I am proud to be associated with this community of committed writers, gathered here for a few days to offer one another intellectual and creative sustenance. For that association, I am indebted to Bonnie Culver, as we, all of us here, are indebted to her. Bonnie's is the face that launched 1,000 writers. I hope that my reading will resonate with Christine's. If we live now in the Anthropocene, the geological era in which human activity is influencing the earth at an unprecedented scale and to an unprecedented degree, then the old nature-culture binary needs rethinking. Toni Morrison tells us that narrative is one of the principal ways in which we absorb knowledge, and Lynn Hegenian tells us that poetry is the language of inquiry. So I hope it may be a way of thinking toward revision of the nature-culture binary to present 5 poems that question it. The first, by Gwendolyn Brooks, recognizes that environmental irresponsibility and racial injustice are not entirely separate. The poem takes place around 1950 and narrates a drive by urban African Americans through the exclusively white suburb of Chicago called Beverly Hills. So this is Gwendolyn Brooks's poem, Beverly Hills, Chicago. It has an epigraph by E.M. Price. The epigraph is, "And the people live till they have white hair." So Gwendolyn Brooks's poem, Beverly Hills, Chicago. The dry brown coughing beneath their feet, only a while, for the handyman is on his way. These people walk their golden gardens. We say ourselves fortunate to be driving by today, that we may look at them in their gardens where the summer ripeness rots, but not raggedly. Even the leaves fall down in lovelier patterns here, and the refuse is a neat brilliancy. When they flow sweetly into their houses with softness and slowness touched by that everlasting gold, we know what they go to tea, but that does not mean that they will throw some little black dots into some water and add sugar and the juice of the cheapest lemons that are sold, while downstairs that woman's vague phonograph bleats, "Knock me a kiss," and the living all to be made again in the sweatingest physical manner tomorrow. Not that anybody is saying that these people have no trouble, merely that it is trouble with a gold-flecked, beautiful banner. Nobody is saying that these people do not ultimately cease to be, and sometimes their passings are even more painful than ours. It is just that so often they live till their hair is white. They make excellent corpses among the expensive flowers. Nobody is furious. Nobody hates these people. At least nobody driving by in this car. It is only natural, however, that it should occur to us how much more fortunate they are than we are. It is only natural that we should look and look at their wood and brick and stone and think while their breath of pine blows how different these are from our own. We do not want them to have less, but it is only natural that we should think we have not enough. We drive on. We drive on. When we speak to each other, our voices are a little gruff. The next 3 poems are my own poems, and they come from a single sequence in which each poem is provoked by a landmark book or paper in the history of the natural sciences. So I'm thinking of things like Lyell's Principles of Geology, Darwin's Origin of Species, and so on. The poem repeats end words taken from one sentence in that work. The idea is that by sharing words with its source, the poem looks back into that text, and by repeating words, it looks out from the source. The rationale behind the sequence is that it is more urgent than ever before that our various languages for understanding ourselves and our world, science and poetry being two of the most intense, be kept in contact with rather than in isolation from one another. So in each case, I'll read the sentence to which the poem responds, but otherwise I'll minimize my commentary. So the first one responds to this sentence from Darwin's The Voyage of the Beagle. And the sentence is, "The remaining land birds form a most singular group of finches related to each other in the structure of their beaks, short tails, form of body, and plumage." And I should say that the poem mentions the o'u, which is a type of songbird, a particular kind of finch, that's native to Hawaii, but which not very long ago went extinct. So the poem is called "Reasoning Too Much is Still Unreasonable." It's not that there are too few individuals remaining, but that there are too few species. Among finches, for example, the o'u did not restructure in time. Needed a new language game, a new form of life, less conspicuous beak and plumage. I too was once widespread, but my numbers declined precipitously last century. I too was last reliably cited in 1989. I do mean to revise my life, but my plan depends on everything else remaining just the same. No further habitat loss, no more introduced predators, no new mosquito-borne viruses. It's hard to find new food sources and nesting sites, hard to develop new resistances in time, hard in these ways not to follow the honey creepers. Small islands are isolated archipelago, every height a crater, lava flows still legible. Here, tapped on the forehead by geological time, we seem to be brought somewhat near to that great fact, that mystery of mysteries, renewal of form. Of the species I have collected here and classified, none is wholly anomalous, yet each is distinct from its closest mainland analog. No way to give each specimen drawer one island's sounds to music box each time you open it, but look at this plumage. And this poem responds to a sentence from William Harvey, the scientist who discovered that blood circulates through our body, and this is from his book, The Circulation of the Blood. Harvey writes, "But omitting the tediousness of all other significations to our purpose, those spirits which pass out through the veins or the arteries are not separable from the blood, no more than flame from the flakes about it." So this poem is called "The Circulation of the Spirits." Peeling back the skin from the carcass of an elk feels like pulling up old carpet, but it sounds like tearing a t-shirt into strips for rags. The smell is one of those that happens not in your nose, but on the back of your tongue. I'm omitting a lot, but no description could be complete, no account replace the experience itself. I don't tell my hunting buddies what I'm telling you. While we're laughing, halfway through a second 12-pack, butchering the elk, it speaks to me. They do, its many spirits. I don't know their names, they don't tell me, they just talk. The theater before the lights dim, the fingers in your ears murmur of your own blood through your own arteries. It's easier to tie the hide to the trailer hitch and use your pickup to do the work of peeling. Don't forget to make a slit down each leg first. But that seems wrong, inauthentic to me and my buddies, a way of pretending our skins aren't separable from our muscles. There's a way you talk after 4 beers and over a stack of bloody cuts of venison, in which words like inauthentic sounds sensible. But I don't mention the voices even then. Still, that is how bodies bear spirits, as smoke holds flame. And this poem responds to another sentence by William Harvey from a different book this time, about the heart. And he says, the motion of the heart then is after this manner, and the transfusion and propulsion by mediation of the arteries is one of the actions of the heart, so that the pulsation which we feel is nothing else but only the impulsion of the blood by the heart. And so this poem is called The Breathing of Breathing, and I should say about this poem that it narrates an actual event. This is not, I think all the details in here are as accurate as I could make them in recounting this event. I live in Wyoming. It's the least populous state in the Union, so lots of small rural schools. And as part of my job, occasionally we'll go out to schools to work with K-12 students. And this was one of those visits. I think everything else is self-explanatory in it. So the breathing of breathing. You'd remember it too if you'd been in that classroom. Ranch kids, different ages together. Small school, not in a town really, just a C-store, that school, and a church where one highway tees into another. One girl, quiet, attentive, the still point fixing the vexed motion of the others. 13 maybe, no older, told how, when she rested her hand on her horse's neck while he drank, she could feel the water move through his throat. Then we all followed her into her trance, said, after she'd curried him, his shifting his weight leg to leg, all his mannerisms. She liked when she was brushing him, long, straight strokes, to brush with one hand and follow with the bare other. None of the kids made fun of her. No one spoke. The teacher let our silence linger for a while. It wasn't cerebral, that room full of recognitions. Even now, that girl is much more me than I myself am. When I say I mean her. When I say I want to see what a comprehensive vision would see, and see as a comprehensive vision would see, I mean I want to trust as she trusts, feel what she feels. Not yet dawn, in that stall, in that snow-buckled barn, leaning into the breathing of breathing, both palms flat against its flank, forehead resting pressed into its fresh-brushed red-brown rib-cage-rounded coat. Nothing said, nothing unsaid, shared circulation of unshared blood. And this last poem has quite a different tone from that one. Since it will close my part of this reading, thank you for your warm welcome to me and your kind attention this evening. So this poem is by W.S. Merwin, who is a poet who died earlier this year. Like the Gwendolyn Brooks poem, which I started, this poem questions the nature-culture binary by asking a version of Adrienne Rich's question, with whom do you believe your lot is cast? So this is W.S. Merwin's poem, The Last One. Well, they'd made up their minds to be everywhere because why not? Everywhere was theirs because they thought so. They with 2 leaves, they whom the birds despise. In the middle of stones, they made up their minds, they started to cut. Well, they cut everything, because why not? Everything was theirs because they thought so. It fell into its shadows, and they took both away, some to have some for burning. Well, cutting everything, they came to the water. They came to the end of the day. There was one left standing. They would cut it tomorrow. They went away. The night gathered in the last branches. The shadow of the night gathered in the shadow on the water. The night and the shadow put on the same head, and it said, now. Well, in the morning, they cut the last one. Like the others, the last one fell into its shadow. It fell into its shadow on the water. They took it away. Its shadow stayed on the water. Well, they shrugged. They started trying to get the shadow away. They cut right to the ground. The shadow stayed whole. They laid boards on it. The shadow came out on top. They shone lights on it. The shadow got blacker and clearer. They exploded the water. The shadow rocked. They built a huge fire on the roots. They sent up black smoke between the shadow and the sun. The new shadow flowed without changing the old one. They shrugged. They went away to get stones. They came back. The shadow was growing. They started setting up stones. It was growing. They looked the other way. It went on growing. They decided they would make a stone out of it. They took stones to the water. They poured them into the shadow. They poured them in. They poured them in. The stones vanished. The shadow was not filled. It went on growing. That was one day. The next day was just the same. It went on growing. They did all the same things. It was just the same. They decided to take its water from under it. They took away water. They took it away. The water went down. The shadow stayed where it was before. It went on growing. It grew onto the land. They started to scrape the shadow with machines. When it touched the machines, it stayed on them. They started to beat the shadow with sticks. Where it touched the sticks, it stayed on them. They started to beat the shadow with hands. Where it touched the hands, it stayed on them. That was another day. Well, the next day started about the same. It went on growing. They decided to take its water from under, they pushed lights into the shadow. Where the shadow got onto them, they went out. They began to stomp on the edge. It got their feet. And when it got their feet, they fell down. It got into their eyes. The eyes went blind. The ones that fell down, it grew over and they vanished. The ones that went blind and walked into it vanished. The ones that could see and stood still, it swallowed their shadows. Then it swallowed them too, and they vanished. Well, the others ran. They went away as far as they could, the lucky ones with their shadows.